to Francisco so that he can introduce his work to you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining this session. As you know, session is being recorded, so probably you can also get information afterwards if you need to leave or if you want to share it with other colleagues. Before starting this presentation, I kind of organized the presentation into 3 parts. So the first part, I'm going to talk a little bit about whistleblowing because some people might not know straight away what we are talking about when we say the word or the term whistleblowing. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit about research that some colleagues and I conducted related to whistleblowing and its impact on mental health in academics. And finally, I'm going also to present a project called PAOLA, which is a project where I'm the principal investigator, but obviously not working alone, working with many other colleagues from other institutions. Before moving on, just some guidelines on this webinar that I would like you also to take into consideration. Firstly, the fact that information that we are going to see today will not identify any personal data from any individual. Comments during this session must attempt the principle of confidentiality and obey also the legislation in Europe. So obviously, we will try to have some moments for discussion. Feel free also to share your insights during the presentation using the chat, and we can address them in the end. If you do that, make sure that you attempt to this principle of confidentiality in order to not disclose any information that shouldn't be disclosed publicly. Just because we are talking about sensitive issues such as unethical issues within academia. Then the information regarding the PAOLA project is restricted, which this means that it's restricted to the consortium of partners that are developing this project. If you want to disseminate the project, or well, this is just the beginning of the project. If you want to disseminate any kind of information, make sure that you also engage with the consortium in order to disseminate the right information. And any comments that I'll do throughout the presentation are on my own and do not display any kind of opinions from any funding body, specifically when I'm going to talk about the PAOLA project, because it's funded by the European Commission. Guidelines done. Let's start on with the webinar. So as I mentioned, starting with the terminology for everybody to be on the same floor. When we talk about whistleblowing, we're talking about the act of reporting unethical issues that are occurring within an organization to individuals or other entities, and should be taken into consideration for any corrective action. The whistleblowing terminology, it started with some of the issues related to financial crime, but then very fast it was also aligned with other types of issues such as harassment and discrimination, bullying, abuse of power. But firstly, it was organized, it was managed regarding the financial crime. So it was something that legislators started to think about and create due to some fraud issues, corruption issues, and because the act of blowing the whistle was and still is one of the main ways to identify these kind of issues. So this was straight away brought to other arenas, such as I mentioned, harassment, discrimination, and such. Whistleblowers, typically, they bring attention to these kind of issues in a way that they are the individuals that can raise awareness regarding any kind of misconduct behavior that may harm individuals, the public, or even organizations where they are based or with, or which they work with. And obviously, this is something that started in specific countries, such as, for instance, US, UK, and then the European Commission developed this European Directive of Whistleblowing, where all member states transposed the directive. Last time I saw it, I think there was only one country that didn't finish everything regarding the legislation. And obviously, there's some penalties for countries that did not transpose and accommodate this legislation. And the legislation, obviously, it differs from country to country, from member state to member state, but there are some common grounds. One of the aspects of this law, or this directive that then gets to be a law in each country, is the need that all organizations with a number of employees, usually up to 50, or sorry, more than 50 employees, are obliged to implement a whistleblowing channel. And these should be taken into consideration for public and private organizations. In the beginning, when the European Directive was developed and published, I'm not going to say all of the universities or all of the academic institutions, but most of the academic institutions didn't pay attention to this. And then they started to realize that they were also considered in this law. So there's one of the research data that I'm going to show you today might be not updated anymore, but that's the data that we have from 1.5, almost 2 years ago, and we are now in the period of waiting for the publication of the paper. But in the beginning, most of the universities, most of the academic institutions did not pay attention to this. Nowadays, a good number of institutions already pay attention to this, but there's still some space, some place to make improvements. And I'm going to talk about that straight away. Because when we talk about whistleblowing, or when we talk about unethical issues, usually, and as I said, because it was created in regarding to financial crime, there's this aspect of financial risks. But then organizations started to understand that besides the financial risks, other risks would be way more danger to the organizational health. And when I say organizational health, I'm not only talking about the financial health, but also the status, the reputation, and other aspects. One of the key things that academic institutions have is their reputation, as other organizations. And if organizations do not take into consideration the reputation that they have, they will be harmed in terms of public funding or private funding, in terms of applications, and etc. And we've been seeing this alongside with some penalties, some fines as well, that academic institutions may suffer due to not taking into consideration whistleblowing reports that can occur due to any kind of typology that is identified already. So for instance, in this case that I'm presenting now, Duke University faced a penalty of millions of dollars due to a whistleblowing report that was managed in a not so well way. When we talk about the management of a whistleblowing channel, and this is where universities usually suffer, because they are not accommodate of doing these kind of processes and having these kind of procedures. Usually there's the staff person or the student person that it's the go-to person for unethical issues. So universities usually don't have a long experience on implementing whistleblowing channels. And here we have an example of what should be used as a simple but solid workflow to manage reports about unethical issues within a whistleblowing channel. And I'm going to pass through the phases in a simple way. So the first one would be the reception. And this is when someone accesses either a software, online system, or any other way. Usually a good way to implement this is to have an online system. And bear in mind that I'm talking for or about academic institutions. So we are expecting that everybody will have access to online systems. If we were talking about other kind of organizations, these could be different. I have experience in implementing whistleblowing channels in other kind of organizations, and some employees, for instance, they don't have access to laptops or even internet on their mobiles. They sometimes even don't have a mobile. So the type of workflow would be very different. In this case, no. So first would be the reception through an online system. And actually, this is what we've done when we implemented a whistleblowing channel in an academic institution. Then the triage, this is where the report management starts. Within this process or this phase, there should be a database where reports must be contained in a secure and safe way and accessed only by key individuals. So they shouldn't be public. And then it's also the phase where there should be made a pre-score of the report. What we understand by a pre-score is confined to a team of X number of individuals, usually 3, 5, or 7 individuals. Standard is like 3 or 5. These individuals will assess the report and then decide whether the report is out of scope or the report should be assessed afterwards by a committee. In this case, can be an ethics committee or an equivalent of an ethics committee that will decide if this should be, the issue should be investigated or not. Either if the report is out of scope on the pre-score phase, or if the ethics committee decides that the report shouldn't be investigated, there's the end of the process, obviously. If the report should be investigated, this investigation can be done internally or externally. And then after the investigation is concluded, there's a resolution phase where there might be the need to apply or to identify and then apply corrective measures, create a conclusion prior to publishing a final report that should be archived in a safe and secure place. And then the end of the process. All of these should be able to be logged and audited in order to resolve any conflict that may appear throughout the time. And the flow itself should also consider 3 dimensions. The first one, and usually most difficult to organizations, and now I'm saying either academic organizations or other organizations from any sector, it's the confidentiality. Organizations are not very comfortable in providing a whistleblowing channel that allows confidentiality and anonymity. Why? Because organizations expect that if the whistleblowing channel allows anonymity and also ensures total confidentiality, the number of reports will be huge. And this is totally wrong. There might be a higher volume of reports in the beginning when the whistleblowing channel is implemented. But then going back to this part, if this bit here, the pre-score reports, and also if the ethics committee or its equivalent work well, reports that don't have any kind of evidence will be excluded and put it out of scope. So this is kind of a myth that organizations, either academics or not, should be taking into consideration, which is anonymity and confidentiality will not increase the volume of reports. And instead of doing that, providing anonymity and confidentiality will secure and also make more comfortable the way of whistleblowers using such a channel. Then the second dimension is to have the whistleblowing channel widespread. This is extremely important for organizations that have different types of individuals working there. And when I say working, operating in the organization, and academia is one of the places where this happens in a very specific way, because we have university staff, either admin, research lab, or other types of staff. We have the academic staff, so say lecturers, for instance. And then we have the research staff, postdoctoral, research assistants. And finally, we have students, which are not considered for some legislations staff, but they are individuals that suffer a lot unethical issues. And then there's also the dimension of hierarchy. So depending on the type of population that I'm talking about, I need to have, and I'm just advancing one of the messages that I have in the next slide. The type of communication should be specific and spread in a wide way. And this can be done in different ways, either with leaflets, flyers, with a podcast, for instance, with webinars, with students' unions, etc. Then the third dimension, and also extremely important, is the security that the channel provides. And the security, not only the operational security, because nowadays we already have very good solutions to make the process very secure. Obviously, there will always be flaws because we are living in a time where innovation and technology is revolving and progressing in a speed that it's impossible to take track on. But when I say security, not only the operational security, but I'm also mentioning or thinking about the emotional security that individuals will feel by using the channel. And this is related, obviously, with the previous dimension, the widespread. Talking about the channel and explaining to all individuals how the channel works. So going back to the workflow and explaining straight away how this works, it's extremely important. Academic institutions, once they implement the whistleblowing channel, they should take into consideration also at least 3 steps. The implementation, that should be robust and effective in order to establish the procedure in a solid way, and also in a way that everybody is able to understand how the channel works, including, for instance, creating training moments, either for staff, students, and other types of individuals and other organizations that the university could work with. The step of monitoring. Monitoring is extremely important to maintain not only the confidentiality and to protect the whistleblowers' identities, but also to review the process and address any aspect that should be addressed, and also transform or improve the process throughout the time. And then the regular communication. And this is related also to the dimension of widespread. Basically, because we have different types of individuals, so we should communicate in a different way using different resources in order to tackle and to get to the same level of communication of different people. By doing this, academic institutions try to ensure, and when I say try, it's because it's not possible to ensure 100% any of these steps, so it's always a work in progress. But by doing this, academic institutions will ensure that everybody understands what this tool that promotes ethics, integrity within the academic institution is supposed to, and how to use it. If academic institutions fail to do this, obviously they will also face aspects that some of them are already being mentioned publicly in some platforms, such as Nature, for instance. In this one on the left, we see here that universities that are not going or are not doing a good management of a whistleblowing channel will have or are having already a mental health crisis or an increase of a mental health crisis, as we have been all observing throughout the work that the ReMO network has been conducting. And this is linked with this image on the right, talking about the toxic research culture. And academic institutions shouldn't allow themselves to be on this kind of picture. They should be the first ones to take a step and address the issues instead of swiping and not addressing them. I'm going to invite you all to join this Slido just to open the discussion on the research data that I'm going to show you regarding the research activities that we developed in the past. And I'm going to also change the screen just for these two questions. I'm going to ask you to answer this question. How often have you experienced or observed unethical issues in an academic institution? I'm going to give like 1 minute for people to answer this. Okay, 10 seconds, last answers. Okay, so most important then, if it was often, sometimes, or regularly, is the fact that nobody here mentioned never, which goes aligned with the data that I'm going to share with you. And now I would like you to answer this one. What were the unethical issues that you experienced or observed? And you can participate more than once. 1 minute to answer this. Ten seconds, last questions, last answers. Okay. So we have bullying, mobbing, scientific misconduct. We have harassment, sexual harassment. We have nepotism, a lot of issues, which also confirms what we've been saying until now, and what aligns with. Thank you for your participation, and goes on alignment with what we've been saying before and what we are going to show now. This is a research that we conducted in 2022 until early 2023, and we presented these early results in Cordoba last year during the Marie Curie Alumni Association annual conference. The research that, due to time, I'm not going to be able to explain everything, but I can afterwards share with Brian to share with the network the link to this poster. But the research that we conducted was based in 3 research activities. The first research activity was to go on a list of 96 universities, to their websites and public information, and try to understand and identify if these universities did have available a whistleblowing channel or not, or any kind of mean to communicate and raise awareness on an unethical issue. These universities, they were selected randomly, but based on their Shanghai ranking. We selected universities from the top tier Shanghai ranking, from the middle tier, and from the low tier. Then we also conducted a survey with 258 individuals, if I'm not wrong, or 256, something like that. And we also conducted focus groups with academics. And some of the results I'm going to share with you. So the first activity with the 96 universities, we observed that more than half didn't have any kind of whistleblowing mechanism. From those who did have whistleblowing mechanism, and when we say now that 49 did have a whistleblowing mechanism, we are accepting that, for instance, a student office would be a whistleblowing mean, just because in the information about a student office, or student counselor, for instance, there was information, for instance, saying that students could go to this office to raise issues, or an office that would allow staff to go and raise some issues. Obviously, if the university didn't have a whistleblowing channel standard as the ones that we were talking about, but did have only one person or a group of people that would allow someone to go into an office and raise an issue, that wouldn't obviously allow anonymity. So from the institutions that did have some mean to report unethical issues, 77% did not allow anonymity. Okay. And this is totally against what studies have been showing regarding the availability of being confidential and anonymous. Then we identified that our respondents to the survey flagged 509 unethical issues that they identified either because they experienced or because they observed. This is split between these topics: corruption, conflict of interests, abuse of power, bullying, harassment, and fraud. We did not explain what each of these categories would mean, and that was a limitation and something that we should have done in our survey. So it's something that when we replicate this activity, we will improve that. And this is just to give you a note that maybe some people selected one issue and they should have selected another. And this was kind of more than 5 issues that each person on average experienced or observed, taking into consideration the number of participants that we had. This is 1 in 5 individuals experienced or observed already at least one unethical issue. I can see how many people we have here, 19. So we have at least almost 4 people that today with us already experienced or observed at least one unethical issues. The impact and the relationship with mental health that we also identified was related to 3 main topics: anxiety, and when we say anxiety, is severe anxiety; acute stress, so it's not stress in a way that it's normal and healthy, because stress can be good for us to make us alert. This is acute stress, so stress that is damaging, and also depression. And that's the reason why we, as Brian mentioned, that's the reason why we started to think more about this this topic, the relationship between mental health and ethical issues, how this is being responded by the academic sector. And we developed the PAOLA project, which is the acronym for the Pandora box of whistleblowing in academia. The project was designed through the year of 2023. We applied for an Erasmus Plus funding, and we received the Erasmus Plus funding. Then there were some delays on the starting date of the project, and we started just 1.5 months, more or less, ago. So early days for the PAOLA project, but very promising. We have 2 main objectives. The first one is to develop an observatory for academic whistleblowing in Europe. This is very ambitious, we know, but we are going to also to be supported by the network eventually, and hopefully by some of the members, if not all of the members of the ReMO network. And the second, mainly not only for the first objective, but mainly for the second objective, which is disseminating and communicating this observatory throughout the academic institutions. We will need to think how to do this, either with individuals that may use whistleblowing channels in their institutions, but also with academic institutions as a whole, to help them to implement better channels and create better training, and also with policymakers for them to raise awareness. And in some countries that we identified already, in some countries, to include some of the individuals that are in the academic institutions, such as, for instance, students, to be recognized as individuals that should use whistleblowing channels, because in some countries, students are not recognized for instance, the rights that staff have. So it's not a long run, it's a marathon for this topic. We believe that the project is innovative because of three key things. First of all, and obviously, and most obvious, there's not an observatory for whistleblowing in academia. So only this, it's already an argument. Because the project will combine not only literature review, but also the legal framework that the different state members have. And this will then be taken into consideration when we launch the observatory. And then, because the observatory is not being designed only by academics, although we do have partners that are within the academic sector, the academic sphere, we have other partners that are from the civil society, in order to provide insight and knowledge from other sectors that have more experience in implementing such tools. These are the partners. So we have University of Bocconi, we have Dublin City University, we have IFA ReMO, which is the one that I represent. We have the Marie Curie Alumni Association, SciLink, and Transparência Internacional, which is the Portuguese chapter of Transparency International. For those who don't know, it's an organization that promotes integrity and transparency throughout organizations globally. The work packages for you guys to also take into your knowledge, and also be more aware and get interest on this project, are going to be, besides the management of the project, obviously, the data insights. So we are going to retrieve data to understand some of the perceptions, ideas, and attitudes towards the act of blowing the whistle within academia with different stakeholders. The legal analysis, so what I was saying before, combining some literature review with legal review. Then the development of the observatory and the outreach. And the call to action for this network is mainly for 4 things, at least. Obviously, we will be open always to engage in other aspects that I'm not mentioning now. The first one is to engage with the project only through having updates on the newsletter. Engage with operational activities, so be part of the discussion actively by participating in focus groups, surveys, and other types of discussions. Be active in the future when the observatory is launched, because this is a 1-year project, and in the end of this year, we aim to keep the observatory going, but this is going to be based on a voluntary basis, so every help is welcome. And engage in disseminating the project throughout your network. because the project, as I mentioned, started very recently, we don't have yet a contact, an official contact to the observatory. So I'll leave my email here for you guys to get in contact with me, and then obviously I'll do the link with the rest of the consortium. And when we have official contacts, we also disseminate that through the people that start already to talk with us about this initiative. And also taking couple of minutes for any questions or any comments and create a bit of discussion. I thank your your attention and participation very much. Thank you.